Hello, and welcome to School Health Presents, working with our exceptional individuals during the COVID-19 pandemic. This video is going to take a look at the whole idea of time, scheduling, and what we can be doing at home to support all of our students and individuals, both those with exceptionalities and those who are neurotypical. I've seen a lot of great things on Twitter and through video feeds over the last couple of days, parents working with their children to try and develop home schedules. In some cases, the schedules are being dictated by school districts who have certain times for online classes. So we see a lot of Zoom and GoToMeeting and Skype being used, and that's absolutely phenomenal. It's not always going to be as easy, though, for some of our exceptional individuals. So the first thing that we can do is really something basic and with materials we can find around the house, and that's create a daily schedule. I've done a very simple daily schedule here, and I created it basically using a shoebox and a sheet of paper that I wrote on. Now you'll notice it's nothing fancy. It's just some very basic things, but there's a couple of key points that go along with that. The first thing is we've color-coded things. So you'll see both breakfast and lunchtime are in the same color. Why? We have a very strong connection psychologically between color and activities when we do things. So for example, if some of you were to look at my Outlook, you would see that there is a color consistency based on what the activity is. So you can tell when I'm driving to someplace in the school health AT mobile because you'll see a chunk of green on a day. And that really signifies not just to others looking in, but to myself, but from a quick glance, what we're actually doing. So use color coding as you go through. Some of you are already doing this. You may be printing calendars off of a computer. That's wonderful, but not everybody has a color printer at home. And this is a way you can get other individuals involved in this too. Crayons are fine, markers are fine, pencils are fine. Have them practice writing as we're going through, but also take some ownership within the schedule itself. Because again, we're at home. We're not in a school setting or a workplace setting. We need to understand how to budget our time that way. The great thing about using something like a shoebox too is the fact that you can move this around so it can be wherever the individual is, and you can keep supplies in here in case they need it at some point. Use poster boards, use whatever, but make sure everybody's in agreement with what that activity is. A way of keeping track as to how long activities go is not just looking up at the clock, because not everyone understands how to read a clock. I understand that they're mainly digital clocks today. I remember when we transferred over from analog clocks to digital clocks, and the greatest fear was, well, our children will never know what half past or quarter till means. And those are all essential concepts because those are fractional concepts. And fractions are maintained not just in time, but fractions also take place in cooking. Where are we using a half cup versus a quarter cup of something, or a tablespoon versus a teaspoon? So fractions are important when we address the overall look at things, and we'll talk about those in a separate video. But the idea of time isn't always something easy to manage or to grasp. And so for some individuals, they need more of a visual cueing when that goes in. The easiest thing, which a lot of people have, is an old-fashioned egg timer. Take that. Allow the students to be using something like that as they go through. The problem with an egg timer from time to time is if it's too small, the students won't necessarily be able to make that visual contact with it. So what are some of the other things that are out there rather than having them stare up at a clock the whole time? If you have an opportunity, pick up something like a time timer. I love this particular one because it's a 5-minute time timer or a 20-minute. I wouldn't necessarily, if you're going out to get a timer, do things more than about 20 minutes. We want to chunk things right now for our students at home because we need to make sure that they're taking the proper sensory breaks as we go in. Why I like these timers is that they are visual timers that aren't focused on the idea of time itself, but are focused on what's left. is focused on duration. And it's very easy to see the duration. As this continues to wind down, that means there's less and less time. It creates a little less anxiety for our students because sometimes as they're looking at a digital clock, just that anxiety of saying, I need to change, is going to have them focusing and fixating more on how much time is left. We see that a lot even with our neurotypical students when it comes to test taking. And that's why we try and move them away from the idea of keep watching the clock and seeing your time. Gauge your time. That's a better thing. Understand the passage of time as it works through. And this is a good way, whichever device you're using, of actually getting our students to understand that. Some of you may also have some other things, like I've got a spiral tube set here. You may have things like this at home. What's great about using something like this for the passage of time is it's actually going to also encourage other thoughts, other ideas as we come through. So in this particular spiral tube set, what ends up happening is airflow goes up to the top, bubbles rise to the top, and then some of the colored liquid actually moves down to the bottom until everything has settled. What's great about that is there can be further lessons then, whether you're going into a science class that you're working with the students on, or you're even talking about the passage of time and how it can be measured in different ways. They used to use sundials, and some of us still have them out in a garden somewhere. Those are things that are life skills, understanding the whole idea of passage of time as opposed to the actual numbers that go into it. So while you're at home, the first thing that I always recommend, start with the schedule. If your exceptional individuals at the house are able to understand how a schedule works and are able to work with you to put it together, let them put it together with you. Take ownership of that. Again, I've seen many great stories out on Twitter where teachers will come home and say to their kids, all right, we need to put a schedule together. And the kids will come together and set their schedules. I had one teacher that commented it was the most amazing thing ever. His kids actually had larger chunks of time for those courses they were interested in and were very hesitant to transfer into something else because they enjoyed reading or they enjoyed math. Let the students work together with this. Make sure you build in, as you see on our schedule here, break time. It is essential, and that's why sometimes a 20-minute timer, or knowing in your mind 20 minutes, should be realistically the point in time where at least a 1 to 2 minute sensory break is necessary. We will talk in another video about the whole idea of sensory breaks and how they can be used, what you can be using at home that you might already have, and what you might want to take a look at having in, not just for this time period now, but the future too. Because don't forget, at some point in time, we need to transition our students back into what will become our new normal time frame. But we also need them to take what's going on over these next few weeks and have that information transferred, because it will help them then throughout the rest of their lives.